U.S. authorities and potentially U.S. court are not convinced that the Mexicans have a very strong case, that it's very unlikely that she would be extradited.
So when they got back from the trip with her luggage, what did they tell you happened to your daughter?
That she got sick from drinking. It was alcohol.
Okay, so it looks like the feds are finally making moves in the Shanquella Robinson case after nearly 3 long years. Explosive new documents just dropped, and they're pointing fingers directly at the so-called Cabo Six. These were the same folks who took that trip with Shanquella to Cabo, Mexico back in 2022, and now the papers suggest they're the ones who allegedly caused her tragic death during that vacation. This case started off hot when it first hit the internet. People were shook by what came out, but after that initial uproar online, things slowed down big time. It felt like justice was fading away, while the suspects were just out there living their lives. Now, the Cabo Six have been swearing up and down that they had nothing to do with it. They've been claiming innocence, saying they didn't touch Shanquella, but guess what? The feds are calling BS. Eyewitnesses stepped forward and official investigation reports just exposed major lies. According to the findings, the Cabo Six allegedly did way more than just stand by. They're now suspected of being directly involved in what happened to her. So now everyone's asking, what really went down that night? Did they plan this before they even touched down in Mexico? Was it a setup from the jump? We're about to dig deep into all of it. Right after Shanquella's death, the streets were loud with calls for justice. People were demanding answers, and the pressure was on. But as time passed, weeks turned into months, then years, the noise died down. The case started fading from the headlines, and it almost felt like the feds just forgot about it completely until now. Because guess what? The feds just dropped a major update, and it's looking like we might finally see some justice for Shanquella Robinson. For the past year or so, journalists and major news outlets have been pressing hard, not letting the heat die down. Starting in 2023, folks have been filing Freedom of Information Act requests.
You gonna keep it hot, what? They, what Go said, they croup.
The one that's like mediocre is in my check-in. I can't.
Begging for anything that could give some insight into what really went down. And finally, just a few days ago, the feds broke their silence. They released 2 separate document files tied to the Shanquella investigation. And let me tell you, even with the redactions, it's wild. There's so much that was going on behind the scenes that the public didn't know a thing about. One of the bombshells in those docs, the FBI talked to someone their names blacked out, but this person mentioned the fight that happened that day. They said they weren't sure what exactly happened, but claimed that Shanquella's friends told them she was drunk and hit her head on a toilet. The documents spill something heavy. One person who spoke to investigators claimed they saw photos of Shanquella's body, and according to them, she had clear bruises and looked like she had been stomped on. That's not just a random injury, that's violent. On top of that, this same person said they believed there were cameras inside the house where it all went down. But here's where things start looking real shady in the weeks following Shanquella's death. Not a single report mentioned any cameras being found in the room where she passed away. That has fans seriously questioning everything. Now, people are saying the Cabo Six might have known about those cameras and took them down before anyone showed up trying to wipe out the evidence and make sure nothing could trace back to them. If that's true, it would mean they were thinking ahead and doing damage control before investigators even got involved. And that's not all. The FBI also dug through Shanquella's phone, but what they found? Totally blacked out in the files, redacted top to bottom. Whatever's in that phone must be major because they're keeping it completely under wraps. The files also show that in November 2022, Mexican authorities told the FBI they needed to speak to someone from the trip so they could issue a temporary detention order. Mexico did end up issuing an arrest warrant, but still, nobody was ever extradited. The FBI docs might be covered in black ink, but insiders are saying that the hidden sections allegedly point straight at the Cabo Six and suggest there's solid evidence linking them to what happened to Shanquella.
So when I got there, she was in the game room. They told me she was not feeling good, so I instantly go to her, put on her side, get a bag, and all that. So I'm sitting right next to her the whole time. I was not there till the next day. I didn't see a fight. I didn't know it was a fight. I didn't know it was a video. I didn't know they did any harm, anything. I went in there and told it was alcohol poisoning, so that's what I helped her. That's what I helped her at. I didn't leave her side. I put on soft music. Summer Walker rubbing her head till the nurse came in. It's wrong. And for y'all to be attacking me, an innocent soul, like, I'm really innocent as fuck. I went there to enjoy my birthday. Like, to enjoy my birthday and to really just goddamn have fun. I didn't have not 1 second of fun. I didn't take one shot and then smoke one blunt and didn't do anything.
Shanquella Robinson, a 25-year-old from Charlotte, North Carolina, set out on what was supposed to be a chill, fun-filled vacation to Cabo, Mexico on October 28, 2022. The trip was said to be a birthday celebration for one of her friends, or at least that's what everyone was told. Shanquella left home in good spirits, healthy, glowing, and full of energy. Just like anybody else would be before heading out on a beach getaway, she had no clue that she'd never return. She wasn't going solo either. She traveled with 6 people who were supposed to be her friends: Malik Dyer, Winter Donovan, Elise Hyatt, Dejani Jackson, her so-called best friend Khalil Cook, and Nazir Wiggins. This whole group pulled up like they were going to have the time of their lives. But behind the scenes, something dark was brewing. From the outside, it looked like a fun friend trip, but the truth was way more twisted. One key detail that stands out: Nazir Wiggins didn't arrive in Cabo with the rest of the group. He came a whole day later, and ever since then, he's been saying he had no clue about what really happened before he got there. According to him, he walked into chaos. He's been claiming that he was completely in the dark about the events leading to Shanquella's shocking death. While the rest of the group stayed quiet or dropped messy, conflicting stories, Nazir stood firm. He said by the time he landed, everything had already spiraled out of control, way past anything he could have ever expected. From the outside looking in, it seemed like just a bunch of young adults heading out for a luxury getaway, sunshine, sand, and a birthday celebration. But as the real story started coming out, it became painfully obvious that what happened in Cabo was nothing like a normal vacation. Shanquella walked into that villa surrounded by people she thought were her friends, people she trusted. But sadly, not everyone in that room had good intentions. The very next morning, after they landed in Cabo, things took a dark and unexpected turn. The kind of twist nobody could have predicted, at least not from the outside. Her so-called best friend, Khalil Cook, was the first one to reach out to her family. He called Shanquella's mother and said she wasn't feeling well. He claimed she was dealing with alcohol poisoning, and the way he explained it, it didn't sound too serious. Just a rough hangover. And let's be real, that kind of thing isn't shocking when people are partying on vacation. At that moment, her mom didn't think anything was off. They were in Mexico, likely having drinks, and Khalil wasn't just some random friend. He'd been around the family for years. So naturally, she took his word for it. There was no reason to panic, not yet, but as the hours passed, everything started to spiral. Khalil called back again, and this time, things had escalated big time. Khalil called Shanquella's mother again, and this time, the tone was completely different. He said medics had pulled up to the villa in ambulances and were actively trying to revive Shanquella. Right then, it was clear. This wasn't just about too many drinks or feeling sick. What was first painted as a minor hangover had now turned into a full-blown emergency. The situation was way worse than anyone had let on. Despite all the medics' efforts, they couldn't bring her back. According to the official death certificate, Shanquella was pronounced dead on October 29th by 3 p.m. That alone was already heartbreaking. But what made everything so much worse was how the details around her death didn't match the story her family had been told. From the jump, something just didn't sit right. And as time passed, an even darker truth started to come out. When you really break down what's written in that death certificate, Khalil's story starts crumbling. Yes, the report confirms she was found unconscious, but there's one huge thing missing. No mention of alcohol anywhere. None. Despite Khalil saying she had alcohol poisoning, there was absolutely zero support for that in the official record. If alcohol had even played a small role in her death, it would have been listed, but it wasn't. Instead, what the certificate showed was chilling. The cause of death was listed as severe spinal cord injury and atlas luxation, which means a major dislocation where the skull connects to the spine. That kind of injury, it doesn't just randomly happen, and it definitely doesn't come from drinking too much. This revelation completely shattered Khalil's story to Shanquella's mother, and raised a ton of questions about what really went down in that villa. With the new information out, it was obvious. The story being pushed by Shanquella's so-called friends wasn't just misleading. It was a straight-up lie. And not just any lie, the kind that tries to bury the truth under a fake narrative. The reality was way more disturbing than anybody could have imagined. And the more people dug into the details, the more disturbing it all became. Now, for those who don't know what Atlas luxation is, let's break it down. It's when there's unstable or extreme movement in the top two bones of the spine, right at the neck. In plain terms, that means she had a dislocation at the top of her spine. This kind of condition can sometimes be hereditary, or it can come from blunt physical trauma. And since Shanquella had no medical history with this condition, it's pretty clear what caused it. Somebody hurt her. But the spinal cord injury and Atlas luxation weren't the only signs that something violent had happened. Shanquella's body showed even more trauma that told a story her friends tried to leave out. She had a visible knot on her head. Her lip was busted, and one of her eyes swollen and bruised. These weren't clumsy vacation accidents. These were the kind of marks you get from getting beat up, clear signs she had been physically attacked. Then came a detail from the autopsy report that made everything 100 times worse. It revealed that Shanquella passed away approximately 15 minutes after suffering those brutal injuries. Now, on paper, 15 minutes might not sound like a lot, but when someone's in pain, every single second feels like forever. The thought of her spending those last moments in agony, possibly confused, terrified, and feeling betrayed by the people she trusted. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And this is where things started to spiral out of control for the so-called friends who had been scrambling to cover their tracks. Not long after word of Shanquella's death went public, a disturbing video surfaced online, and it blew the lid off every lie they'd been trying to sell. The footage shows Shanquella being viciously attacked by none other than one of the people she had traveled with, Dejanai Jackson. And calling it a fight doesn't even come close to the truth, because it wasn't a fight. A fight means both people are swinging, defending themselves, but that wasn't what happened. Shanquella wasn't hitting back. She wasn't even defending herself. She was completely defenseless, being beaten down, while everyone else just stood around. The most gut-wrenching part, not one of those so-called friends stepped in to help. Not one tried to stop Dejanai from attacking her. They just stood there and recorded it like it was some kind of entertainment. And then there was Khalil, the same person who picked up the phone and called Shanquella's mom, pretending to be worried, acting like he cared. But he didn't lift a finger to help her, not when it actually mattered. Khalil had the nerve, the straight-up audacity to say, "Quella, can you at least fight back?" Like she ever stood a chance against the savage beating she was taking. That one line said it all. And when the video hit the internet, everything changed. The truth couldn't be hidden anymore. Shanquella hadn't just gotten sick, and she definitely didn't die from alcohol poisoning. She was attacked viciously. And the people who were supposed to be her friends, they didn't just let it happen. They covered it up and lied straight to her family's face. Now I'm not going to share that video, and for good reason. First, Shanquella wasn't even wearing clothes during the attack. And second, it's just too disturbing to watch. But what I can say is this: she was hurt bad, really bad. And what makes it even harder to stomach? Not one person in that room tried to help her. Not one. Nobody stepped in. Nobody yelled for it to stop. Nobody even told Dejanai to back off. They just stood there like it was some kind of twisted show. Like Shanquella wasn't even a real person. Like she wasn't someone they laughed with, traveled with, called a friend. They watched her get brutalized and did nothing. And as if all that wasn't horrifying enough, new reports say Dejanai wasn't the only one who laid hands on her. It's now being said that Winter Donovan also jumped in, meaning Shanquella might have been ganged up on, not just attacked by one person. Sources have alleged that Winter grabbed Shanquella by the neck and slammed her straight into a wall. And when you match that with the injuries listed on her death certificate, a broken neck and spinal cord trauma, it starts to make way too much sense. If this claim is true, then Dejanai's brutal attack wasn't even the final blow. Reports say that Winter's assault happened after Dejanai had already beaten her, and it was only after Winter's hit that Shanquella stopped moving completely. That moment might have been the one that took her life. And then things spiraled even further. A video started making rounds online. It showed Shanquella's so-called friends gathered behind her back at the resort, and it seriously looked like they were plotting something shady. The vibe was off. Real office. But wait, it gets even worse. A resort concierge came forward with a shocking statement. He said Shanquella looked like she didn't belong with the group. According to him, she seemed to not fit in with the others. When I introduced myself, she did not greet me or smile. She was indifferent, having nothing to do with the atmosphere of the celebration. That's cold. She was clearly isolated, treated like an outsider at her own friend's birthday trip. And after Shanquella was pronounced dead, what did the Cabo Six do? According to the concierge, he gave them space to mourn and grieve. He even stepped outside the main entrance to let them process what happened. But minutes later, he heard laughter. While they were on the phone calling her mom, pretending to be heartbroken, they were lying through their teeth, saying she died from alcohol poisoning. Meanwhile, Mexican authorities didn't play around. They took the case very seriously and classified it as femicide. They released a public statement confirming this case is fully clarified. An arrest warrant was issued for a friend of hers who was the direct aggressor. And they made it clear this wasn't some random fight. It was a deliberate, targeted attack, a direct aggression. We are carrying out all the pertinent procedures, such as the Interpol alert and the request of extradition to the United States of America. That's what Mexican authorities said as they made it clear they were pushing for action. The case involved two Americans, the victim and the alleged perpetrator. But while Mexico was moving full speed ahead, U.S. authorities seemed to be dragging their feet. This slow response pushed Shanquella's family to take matters into their own hands. They wrote an open letter calling out the delay and directly naming the suspect, the same one identified by Mexican officials. In the letter, they didn't hold back. They mentioned the viral video that showed Shanquella being beaten inside that villa while naked and named the attacker as Dejani Jackson. The letter continued, saying that after an investigation, Mexican law enforcement had issued a warrant for Dejani Jackson, one of the 6 people who left Mexico and ran back to the United States after Shanquella had been pronounced dead. The letter made it crystal clear. Ms. Jackson was identified as the perpetrator of the femicide against Shanquella Robinson, a homicide based on gender. And just in case the U.S. needed a reminder, the family pointed out that if a U.S. citizen commits a homicide in Mexico, they can still face criminal charges in the United States under federal or state law, depending on the crime. Still, the feds kept stalling. So what did Shanquella's family do next? They snapped and filed a civil lawsuit against everyone involved. And when I say everyone, I mean everybody. The Cabo Six, the U.S. Department of State, and even the FBI were all named in that suit. Her mom stepped up and spoke out about the lawsuit. We need real justice for Shanquella Robinson. It's been over 2 years, and not a single arrest? That's unacceptable. This whole situation is a painful reminder of how vulnerable folks, especially young Black women, can be when they step into unfamiliar places, surrounded by people they thought they could trust. And let's be honest, it's on all of us to make sure tragedies like this don't get swept under the rug. Out of nowhere, the FBI finally started speeding things up. After dragging for what felt like forever, they suddenly released those heavily redacted documents, right after a news station had been waiting nearly 2 years to get them. So now the question is, was that the turning point? Or is it just more stalling dressed up to look like action? Do you think the feds are finally getting serious about justice for Shanquella? Or is it all just smoke and mirrors to keep the public quiet? Let me know in the comments. I want to see thousands of y'all sound off on this one. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a drop.